for that. And if participants could use the Q&A option instead of the chat box, that will help us too. And I will be emailing the registrants a list of resources I'm going over tonight. So I won't be loading into the chat box or any of that, but we'll be sending an email out tomorrow, as I will be going over quite a few different resources. So a little bit about myself. I'm a graduate of Paul Smith College and SUNY-ESF, where I focus on aquatic invasive species and environmental policy and management. The first half of my professional career was in environmental education before I spent about a decade working on bird conservation in Montezuma and Onondaga Lake with the National Audubon Society. This is where I first learned about the importance of citizen science, and now I have the privilege to see the value of how citizen science helps with lake protection while working for the Skaneateles Lake Association. And without further ado, I'll start sharing a bit of the presentation. And this is just an overview of tonight's presentation, where I gave a little bit about my background. I'll be talking about the Lake Association, the coalition, what is citizen science, and then highlight a few of the citizen science projects in the Finger Lakes, and highlight a few of the apps and tools that are used to help collect data. And then after that, lead some questions. So the Skaneateles Lake Association is over 50 years old. It was originally a volunteer organization, and I came on board just back in 2019, and then 2018, there was the first executive director, Rachel DeWitt, were the first professional staff of the organization. But what I wanted to highlight this evening is a little bit about our core programs with 2006, the milfoil management program. That's still going strong, where we use benthic matting to help control Eurasian water milfoil. Just last year, we deployed 6 acres of benthic matting that's helping control the populations and keep them at bay. In 2012, we decided we didn't want to have any more invasives coming into the lake and needed to keep them out. And so we've developed a robust aquatic invasive species prevention program at the boat launches, and that's going strong. I have great stewards working at that. And then 2017 was when Skaneateles Lake had its first lake-wide harmful algal bloom. And that's really when the Lake Association came together and decided something needed to be done. And this is where a lot of our programming and core of our efforts are placed in looking at how we can better understand the lake, the nutrient loading. That's where citizen scientists come into play, and also how we can use that data from citizen scientists and folks from Syracuse University and other organizations I'll be talking about this evening on how that data that's collected and interpreted can help drive our decision-making when it comes to watershed improvement projects. And then 2021, this is a very exciting time with the Lake Friendly Living Coalition of the Finger Lakes, and a great group. The group and the coalition spans across 7 other lakes. You see all the partners here. We have a great website that's hosted by the Finger Lakes Regional Watershed Alliance, or as Marty Creamer will tell me, the Alliance. And also wanted to thank our wonderful sponsors, the Nature Conservancy, Chautauqua Lake Association, who was one of the sponsors of the keynote, Doug Ptolemy, who did a wonderful job, was extremely educational earlier today. And I believe we'll have a recording of that. And also our Lake Friendly Living Coalition supporters, the Soil Water District Councils, Cornell Cooperative Extensions, County Planning Departments, and of course, thank you to all who are tuning in tonight to be better stewards and to learn a little bit all together. Here is the website to learn more about our other events going on through the week, but also this is where you can find on the Alliance website, which is www.flrwa.org, Lake Friendly Living, where you can find, as you scroll down, each one of the lakes that are participating. If you click on these logos, when you go to that website, we're asking, we all have different programs to take a pledge for lake-friendly living or like lake-friendly land care. But to encourage to take the pledge, we have a goal to have over 500 additional pledges, through this effort this week. So what is citizen science? Basically, there aren't enough scientists to collect all the data we want to collect. So it's important to have as many folks out and about helping generate data that's useful for scientists to interpret and to help make decisions moving forward. We're very blessed to have the technology to allow to do this. And so I'm looking forward to highlighting a bit about that tonight. So here's some areas of how does citizen science help? As I mentioned, it gives scientists additional data beyond the capacity to collect. It can be shared as an open source. So different researchers can access it, even if the data might not seem to have a lot of utility. Sometimes there's researchers out there that can find the use for it. So it has that value before you even know it. And it's a great avenue for hands-on place-based education, especially during this past year, during COVID. There's so much you can do in your own backyards, and especially with youth as well. And it provides a sense of accomplishment and sense of belonging to a community. And bragging rights for, especially I'll talk about eBird later, for competing amongst your friends of who's seeing and who's collecting the most data. So I will be highlighting different elements of citizen science. These are examples that I'll be going through: stream monitoring, weather monitoring, the CSLAP program, shoreline monitoring program, the Starry Stonework Collaborative, which is pretty new, and the Finger Lakes Macrophyte Survey, terrestrial invasive species, hemlock woolly adelgid monitoring, which actually Dana Hall will be presenting on tomorrow, iNaturalist and conducting a BioBlitz, and then an event that's coming up later this week that folks who love birds could certainly get involved with. So stream monitoring, I wanted to first highlight a few examples that some might be familiar with. The Isaac Walton League is a national program that can also be found in Central New York. I believe it's the only national program that, at least they say that is the only national program that does stream monitoring with citizen scientists. I believe there's a representative from Isaac Walton League on tonight that's listening in. I saw on the registrants, so thank you, Les, for tuning in. And so this is the Central New York Isaac Walton League did a stream monitoring, I believe, for 9 Mile Creek and Onondaga Creek. So there's more information there. I will be sending a resource out about that. ESF and the DEC put together the Creek Project, which is the Citizens Recreation and Environmental Evaluation Questionnaire Project, where they asked at public launches and areas along water where folks can put boats in and recreate, go fishing at public access sites, allowed citizen scientists to take photos and comment on the visual water quality and types of activities they saw going around. And I believe ESF was active with that. I believe that's come to a close. And then there are some similarities, I believe, with Isaac Walton League stream monitoring, which is in Central New York. I don't believe the WAVE, but this is a statewide program called WAVE. It's water assessments by volunteer evaluators. Really is driven by if there's a trained coordinator in the area. And I believe there may be one in the area now, but I know Isaac Walton League is active as well. And I wanted to highlight a little bit about the Skaneateles Lake Citizen Science Program, where you see the DEC logos, circle here, and then Upstate Freshwater Institute did some sampling. But everywhere you see the Syracuse University S is where we've depended on citizen scientists during rain events, where we communicate and say to them, could you please go out and after about a ½ inch or an inch of rain and sample the streams, and then the bottles were collected and brought back to Syracuse University for analysis. And that really helps, that data on these different streams will help us understand the phosphorus and nutrient loading, and also give us a better look at where there needs to be priority around watershed improvement projects while we're waiting for the 9-element plan for Skaneateles Lake, which should be hopefully done in the next 2 years. Part of the citizen science stream monitoring, one thing I was always hoping for is to have more weather stations around the lake. And what those weather stations would allow for is in the event that it's raining at the north end of the lake and not raining at the south end, where currently we'll put out a communication saying, please, when we see the rain, or NOAA's saying we're expecting rain through the forecast, we say, please plan on sampling your streams. But again, we don't have that microclimate understanding. And what I would hope to see in the future is maybe 10 of these. This is a weather flow. It's a residential meteorological station or MET station, and they all can tie into each other. And if we had 4, 6, or 10 around the lake, it really could help us better manage when to go out and sample streams. And this is something that Dave Eichhorn, for folks who know, Dave is a former Channel 9 WSYR in the Central New York meteorologist. This is what he uses, and there's really great application to this, right to the point of if it started raining where these are, I could actually get a text message saying there's been over an inch of rain in that site, and really could tell us a lot more. MPing with NOAA is an app that helps scientists understand what's happening on the ground, whether it's snowing or whether it's hailing, whether it's rain. Sometimes a lot of the forecasting or NOAA can tell if there's going to be precipitation, but this is a nice way to help verify and build into their algorithms of what's actually happening on the ground. So something worth looking into. I certainly would want to follow up and look into the utility of having more of these residential weather stations if everybody was on the same system. I believe these cost about $300. A small grant could certainly help with that and help scientists make better decisions, within a small climate of a lake. The Citizen Statewide Lake Assessment Program, this is run by the DEC and the New York State Federation of Lake Associations. And this, most lake associations should have this going on. Certainly if there's, I would encourage anyone to, if this is of interest, to check with your local lake association to see if they have a need for volunteers. Generally, it calls for volunteers that have a boat and can go out to the deep hole of the deep zone of the lake, where you could do Secchi disc readings, which is this black and white disc that can tell you how clear the water is or the turbidity of the water. All different field instruments that would be provided and be part of that program, where during the summer months you go out every other week, and you can also split up the jobs too. But I would again encourage you to connect with your lake association to learn more about that. Also, Amy Klinkhammer, I believe, will be maybe presenting later this week. We're waiting for, I think, some confirmation of that, but she will be able to mention a bit more about this too. And then also will probably be mentioned a little bit by Amy later in the week is the New York HABS shoreline monitoring program. And this is also going on around all the Finger Lakes, and the lake associations are involved. We have about, I believe, 34 active zones around Skaneateles Lake and about 44 trained volunteers that are engaged with this. So I would just say right now, the NY-HABS portal is closed down until the monitoring season would start up, which we tend to monitor from mid-July through end of October. But they should be loading it up and reestablishing it soon for trainings. So you can just actually Google or use your favorite browser, NY-HABS, and find out more information about that. I'll also put it in the resource sheet that will be emailed out tomorrow as well. And again, this is part of the trained volunteers, but any citizen or any scientist or any volunteer, anybody with a smartphone or even a camera that can go back to their computer can upload and send in their reports if they see harmful algal blooms. There's a great page by the DEC that has a nice slide deck on how to observe and monitor what harmful algal blooms look like. This time of year, we do get some confusion of pollen getting into the lake and it having a similar look. And then later there's more of your spirogyra or your regular garden variety pond scum that comes in around between late June, early July. And then we start to see on Skaneateles, I know it happens early on other lakes, our harmful algal blooms around between mid-August and through October. But we are keeping a diligent eye out for it. So I will definitely include the link on how to check for harmful algal blooms, as without being a trained volunteer attached to a zone. But we are always looking for volunteers who are all along the lake shorelines to help fill in some of the gaps. And I would certainly encourage, if you have interest, if you're along a shoreline or have access to a shoreline, to connect with your local lake association to get engaged with that as well. Starry Stonewort Collaborative and Macrophyte surveys. This is also another opportunity to get involved. And I will send, you can see there's a sign up form. It's a Google form down here, or you can email Megan Harris at mharris@hobartwilliamsmith.edu. But there's been an uptick of starry stonewort in the Finger Lakes. Unfortunately, we saw that there's some now at the south end of Skaneateles Lake. And we are trying to better understand macrophytes throughout the Finger Lakes, and Hobart William Smith and Finger Lakes Prism is doing a great job with these surveys with Dave Carr and Megan Harris, and they are going to get going pretty soon. It says samples occur bi-weekly from June to October. So I would certainly encourage anyone interested in helping with this. Again, this is if you have a dock or access to the shorelines, and also if you have a boat where you can help do rake tosses. And I believe Laura Bailey later this week will be talking about doing aquatic invasive species surveys, and you can learn more about what a rake toss is and enjoy that as well. IMAP invasives. This is another type of tool being used where any terrestrial or aquatic invasive species could be logged into using a smartphone or through a computer. You can explore to see where they are. It certainly had some utility with noting and observing whether there's hemlock woolly adelgid in the watersheds, and that's helped with trying to ID where best to treat hemlock woolly adelgid and how severe the problem is. And tomorrow, I would encourage, if you haven't registered already, to sign up to learn more about what Dr. Dana Hall, who's also who's the Owasco Lake Watershed Lake Association president, also board member of the Skaneateles Lake Association. Dana has really become an expert by just embracing this topic and going full bore with it, not only for Owasco Lake, but also helping with Skaneateles Lake, and was engaged with working with Atisco Lake as well through the Onondaga County Soil Water Conservation District, where Dana and I both worked with Mark Berger and Teresa Link to where we pooled some resources together to have the county apply for that. We used some of our legacy fund, the Tisco Lake Preservation Association helped use some of their funds to pay for the application to be submitted, and where we were able to garner $50,000 from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to have the Onondaga County Soil Water Conservation District help treat and further survey for hemlock woolly adelgid. But again, I certainly encourage you to tune in to listen to Dana tomorrow to talk about that more in depth. And then Laura Bailey will be talking about the aquatic invasive species later this week on Wednesday, May 5th at 6:30 p.m. Where she'll be actually workshopping how to load in your observations through IMAP invasive. So should be very educational and in depth, and looking forward to that as well. iNaturalist, this is one that's become quite a favorite of mine. I first became involved with doing BioBlitzes, I believe back in 2014. Actually, my first one was done as a New York State DEC environmental educator back in 1998, when we didn't have as much technology to do it, but we did it around Pack Forest and up in Warrensburg with a lot of the DEC staff. So wonderful time. And then later in 2014, now this was the first time I saw how iNaturalist is used to look at basically anything that's living, where you can look to see how you can observe all your different birds, flora, fauna. And I wanted to share, this is a little bit on the Onondaga Lake BioBlitz, where this was a fun event. It was done in one day. You can also just set up a project area where you just leave it open and folks can observe over a longer period of time. BioBlitzes are just a great event to convene the community, but also be able to do things on your own safely too. And in a 24-hour period on Onondaga Lake, there are 425 species observed. And then I also was part of a 2016 with the Skaneateles Conservation Area BioBlitz, where there were 308 observations in 24 hours. And it says it's 12 people. There were more than 12 people, but you had different captains of different flora and fauna that were helping observe. And it's just a great archive to see how the biodiversity is in different areas. I really think there's a lot of utility in our Finger Lakes to establish watershed boundaries with this, to encourage more observations. It's a nice tool to understand what we're gaining and what we're losing, which we really can't tell until we know what we have. You don't know what you've got until it's gone, but you also don't know what you got until you went out and observed it. So that's something I think has a lot of hope for the future to set up more of these projects. If you go to iNaturalist and explore, you can just see there are so many observations throughout the world going on. And the last thing I want to just highlight for those that love to observe birds and get involved with that is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology has a Global Big Day coming up. If you're not, a savvy birder, it's okay if you know a few birds. It's really about getting as many people active and participating in this as possible to generate more data for our scientists to understand how things are doing. And here is a little bit more on how to connect with me. And I'll include this in the email tomorrow as well. And at this point, I'd love to take some questions and see if there's anything coming in. Thanks.
So Frank, we did have one question that came in through the Q&A. And that question was from Michelle. She asks, does Skaneateles Lake experience winter habs?
Not that I know of. I can certainly look into that and check with a few of the other experts. But as far as my understanding goes, that our earliest harmful algal bloom that was observed last year was August 10th. But I will look into the likelihood of whether we could experience a winter hab.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Feel free to put them into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen.
Or in the chat box and whatnot.
Or the chat box. Yeah, absolutely.
And really, this is a nice overview. I didn't want to have too much information overload because there's really a gamut of citizen science, and there's a lot to get into depth later this week. But I think you'll find probably the most helpful is I'll include a PDF of the slide deck, but also just the links to all these wonderful resources for those that want to dive into it.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks, Frank. Okay. So a couple other questions have come in through the Q&A. One is, what are some examples of the species observed in a BioBlitz?
Sure. So in a BioBlitz, it's basically anything that's biota. So anything that's living. We at the BioBlitz, and I certainly would connect with like someone like Don Leopold, or also any of your, if you're, so Don Leopold's at SUNY-ESF. I would encourage, connecting with any of your biology professors that are from your local academic institutions, whatever's closest to your lake. But a BioBlitz can be looking at microorganisms, amphibians, your reptiles, birds, all your different plants. And so there are some other things too, like if you're not familiar with birds, there's a nice app through Cornell Lab Ornithology called Merlin, which helps guide you on how to ID birds and helps you ID. There's apps out there that help you identify trees by taking a photo of the leaves, and it could pop it up so it can help you report your different observations. I love Newcomb's Wildflower Guide. It's a great dichotomous key for if you want to start observing different wildflowers and plants that way. It's a great way to record your garden species and to share with the community what you have in your native plant gardens as we're learning more about that. I really encourage, I'm going to send this out so you have the links, and I really think it's a lot of fun to look into that, and BioBlitzes can be a great event, as I mentioned. I hope that answered your question, Dana, but it's basically anything that's living, would be something that a BioBlitz could count. And I would encourage, if you did one in your community, to find different experts that are, find your mycologists for the fungus that you're going to find. Get your experts in those different guilds.
Great, thanks, Frank. Next question comes from Sonia, and she is curious about the Global Bird Day a little more specifically, and wonders where you can go ahead and input the things that you see, input what you see.
Yeah, so, and I did gloss over that, but that's what I'll also be giving is a lot of these have smartphone apps. So I'll have a link to either the iOS for anybody who has an Apple smartphone, and then some, I believe some are compatible with Android as well. So you'll get that. eBird's definitely on iOS and definitely on Android. And so I would just encourage you to, I don't know if you can see this well, I have kind of my nature, whoops, it went away. This is my nature folder with eBird as an app for my phone. And it's going to log in, but you basically download it as an app, and you can set up an account and start observations. So I'm not sure if that answers Sonia, but I will be giving the link to the big day, and it has, you can submit a observation in 5 minutes, or you can be looking for birds the whole day. So hopefully that answers the question.
Great. Thanks, Sonia. And if it doesn't, feel free to add a little bit more. So our next question comes from William, and he asks about HABs and asks if, do each of our lakes have HABs at different times of the late summer? HABs is such a conversation, and we're all experiencing it differently. So go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, so harmful algal blooms definitely vary from lake to lake and from year to year. The different factors that can impact harmful algal blooms is lake climate change. So if we're having warmer temperatures, and so again, I guess I have to back up and say, what is a harmful algal bloom? So it's basically a bloom of microcystis colonies, which is that can produce microcystin, which is a known liver toxin. That's what we're majorly concerned about. It's a type of cyanobacteria. And when it gets between 75, 77 degrees Fahrenheit in water temperatures, that's when harmful algal blooms are optimal. So when your surface temperatures, your water temps in your shallows around your water edges or overall lake temp, when it hits 72, that's kind of when you want to start paying attention and be on the lookout. Our earliest one that we observed was last year, August 10th. I know Otisco Lake had one July 8th, and then didn't have one for a while. And sometimes rain events, heavy rain events can, get more soil going, more nutrients going. With climate change holding more moisture in our atmosphere, our rain events can get more intense and really generate more of those nutrients. And when that, yummy phosphorus laden food becomes available, whether it's already as a legacy sediment getting mobilized from within the lake already, moving up through the water column from, high wind events, getting things moved around, or after a large rain event, you can start to see them. But it's temperature driven is one of the major environmental factors as well, along with the nutrients. Oh, Jen, I think you're on mute and I can't hear.
I am. Thank you. Yes. Maura had a question. Maura said, many of these programs are great for children and engaging them in the environment. Can you talk a little bit more about engaging our youth?
Yes, and I think, so I know Les Montessori and a good friend, Tom Hughes from Isaac Walton League, is a great resource for stream education programs. So if you wanted to learn more about engaging youth around that, I know our Skaneateles Lake Association, we are working on a floating classroom and developing curriculum for that. But we'll be working with the Mid Lakes Navigation, also have our own boat, but we're looking at how to have basically a watershed science program that's, could have field experiences on land. We're looking at developing, curriculum and lessons that students can do on their own from home. But I would start, Isaac Walton League's great. We hope to have curriculum. I would check in with your Skaneateles Lake Association, or sorry, your local lake associations, and also the DEC. Has a nice, good environmental educator in the area. Her name's Betsy Eucharitis. Has wonderful resources to Project WET is another type of environmental education handbook, and there's really so much that's an area I could keep going on. But I would certainly, start. iNaturalist could probably be a good simple thing if you don't mind giving, a tablet or a phone, depending on how young the youth are. But that's something that our youth can get involved with just learning more about what's in their own backyard. Great question, Mara. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a great answer too. Great question, great answer. We have a question from Paul, and he says, Frank, other than rake tosses, do you know if any more high-tech techniques are applicable to detect aquatic invasives, such as genomic testing?
So that's a great question, Paul. It sounds very loaded too. And I'm wondering if that's from Paul Teresi. Thanks. So a couple things. From a citizen science standpoint, I know rake tosses have kind of been like the low-tech version that Laura Bailey will be talking more about. But there are, as far as just research and the genomic study, I know we're getting involved with doing more of understanding what's coming in, and I can discuss, there's a way to look at DNA testing of seeing what's in the streams, whether it's coming from human material or different animals. There are some studies going on at ESF, the similar, I believe it's Hyatt Green at ESF, who also was looking at finding COVID in wastewater streams, with the Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment Plant, looking at different dormitories to help with COVID. So there's great tech out there. And then there's another way to kind of with your sonar or fish finder, or different types of your sonar reading on a boat. A good advanced fish finder can show different heights that the plants grow. And if you have monocultures of an aquatic invasive, that characterization of that monoculture, where if you know the plant only grows to a certain height, you can characterize that through the sonar. And that's a wonderful technique that the late and great Bob Werner, our lake ecologist, Dr. Robert Werner, who we're actually creating a boat after and naming a boat after, used to, and we are still doing this with aquatic invasives with John Menepace, Aquatic Invasives, Inc., where they will go around the lake and pick up on that sonar to see if there's Eurasian water milfoil. The question is, could we do the same thing for starry stonewort if there are monocultures of it? But it does get difficult when the aquatic plants are kind of, all mixed in together and not in a monoculture. So that, I hope that helps answer the question. It's our wonderful president of the Skaneateles Lake Association that asked.
Oh, right on. Okay, perfect. And Frank, you may be able to see the Q&A. If you see this comment from Marion, she says, Frank, you may want to mention Merlin, which is a free bird identification app from Cornell Lab of Ornithology and ties into eBirds. Also, I See Mammals app, especially for recording bear sightings.
Yes, and I believe there has been a bear sighting in the past here on Skaneateles Lake years ago. But yeah, that's great. Thank you for that, Marion. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, Merlin is a great tutorial app on helping identify birds if you're just starting out learning about birds. But I always it's just like playing tennis. If you want to get better at anything, you play with someone who's a little bit better than you. And if you know someone who knows their trees, invite them over. If you know someone who knows their birds, invite them over. Go out with them and enjoy the outdoors and get to learn more with experts you can surround yourself with.
That's great. Any other questions from anyone in the audience? Anything anyone would like to put into the Q&A?
Yeah, certainly any other suggestions like Marion, if you know of other citizen science activities going on, projects that are going on in the Finger Lakes that you think others would be interested in, please send them our way. I'd be happy to put that into the packet going out tomorrow as well too. Because this is, again, there's so much that can be done. And I will say that it's important to have somebody who will actually be at the other end interpreting and seeing how the data can be used as well. So there are things that are fun to do, and but I wouldn't suggest doing anything that is busy work without having a plan and what you want to do with the data and understanding what you want to do with the data. But again, when it comes to iNaturalist, I think understanding how our biodiversity is as so much is changing, we're seeing so many threats. I think we need a good baseline of what's around here. And I was amazed when I went on there today, see how many people are using this and how many observations are already there. It's really remarkable.
Great. Let me see. I think we just had one more. Mention from Dana says, you mentioned Mid-Lakes Navigation having a citizen science role. Is that true? Is that in the works?
So someone asked, I believe, about educational. I think when Mara asked about educational programs of what's being done. And I should have mentioned too, beyond Mid-Lakes Navigation, we are working on a floating classroom. And I think that's when I was talking about Mid-Lakes. Or unless you saw the slide related to the harmful algal bloom monitoring, I'll touch on that. But I did want to go back to education. I didn't mention that there's, science on Seneca. There's, certainly other programs as well in other Finger Lakes. I believe on Cuga Lake, there's a science program, a floating classroom as well. That I think I went out with the Nature Conservancy on that. It was is it a long pontoon boat?
It's now, well, they purchased the Teal, which is their new boat that they bought a couple of years ago that they now do all of their science testing off of their new boat, the Teal. Yeah.
Yes. And then specifically I think Dana was getting at, so there was a slide under our harmful algal bloom monitoring where we did train and provide with, the DEC, we provided some of the DEC training materials, and I connected with a lot of the captains of the Mid-Lakes Navigation crew. So as Mid-Lakes Navigation, most folks, it's the Judge Ben Wiles that goes around the north end of the lake, and then the Barbara, which is the dinner boat or the mail boat, circumscribes the entire lake. And so we thought it made sense to train the captains as if they're going out, they're driving along the shoreline. Why not have them know what a harmful algal bloom looks like, and if they see one, be able to report, basically to the Skaneateles Lake Association office, aka my cell phone, so we can connect with whoever's at that zone as a trained volunteer to verify what the captain saw, and so they could send in their reports, through the NY-HABS program. And then this year we just put in an order. We'll be outfitting. And we haven't even done a press release on this yet, but we'll be outfitting the Judge Ben Wiles with a sensor to pick up on, I believe, chlorophyll A and phycocyanin are some of the analytes, which is, fancy words for saying, sensors that can help detect harmful algal blooms or upticks in those, those analytes that, could depict a harmful algal bloom. So I hope that's what you were getting after a little bit, Dana. And yes, it is true that Mid-Lakes Navigation is part of the citizen science component of looking out for HABs.
Any additional questions? We've answered everything that was in the Q&A. Oh, wait. Lindsay mentions.
Yes.
From Canandaigua, if you're looking to get kids more involved in citizen science, many nature centers in the region offer great programs such as bio blitzes and forest camps. Cummings Nature Center between Canandaigua and Honeoye Lakes has wonderful programs for youth interested in nature. Yeah, I'm sure we can provide resources for children's nature programs in the area, right, Frank?
Yeah, and I know there's in this local area we have the Baltimore Woods Centers for Nature Education, and I believe Atisco Lake is ramping up stuff with their community center. So it'll be nice to see some programs going on there too.
Yeah, Ithaca offers some also, some camps in the woods, gets kids off off the grid.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing any additional questions come in, folks. If you have anything on your mind, please feel free to add it now.
And you'll have my email after I send out the packet, so you can keep the questions coming. So thanks everyone, and thanks Jen for helping moderate tonight. Really appreciate it. Okay, with that, hopefully everyone's registered for future events, and please, if you haven't signed a pledge with your local lake association, please do so. And wishing everyone a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.